Hello. Welcome. In this episode, I want to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about emotions again in this one, but I'm going to specifically talk about the feeling proud and feeling our feelings because this keeps coming up and I wanted to share it with you all. And then I also want to circle back and talk about nourishing the nervous system. And something that I think isn't talked about very much is what can happen as you start to heal. So, as you have more of a regulated nervous system and you start to repair and heal, other stuff can come up. Some old stuff can come up. So, I want to talk about those two things. And I want to start by talking about the feeling proud. Why this came up. I just launched my very first course. So I've taught a long time. I used to teach in a regular brick and mortar university, which was really fun. And then I've been doing more teaching online in the since, we all started doing more online since COVID hit. But this is the first course that I have built and launched, and I am so proud of it. I can't even believe that I finally got this done. I've been wanting to do this, but what happened is I started wanting to share all of the things that I have learned that really help nourish my nervous system, the things that have been the most helpful for me, really in stress and anxiety. I didn't even know I knew I was kind of an anxious person. I'm kind of that ambitious, go, 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 that kind of person that just likes things to be done really well and can get really stressed and anxious about that. So my whole family says, the joke is that I can make a picnic a stressful event. Really, because I just wanted to be a good. So I knew I was like that, but I didn't realize how much anxiety I was holding in my body. I just that was kind of my normal and has been my normal for so long that I guess I just didn't know. So I really wanted to share the stress resilience and the reducing of anxiety strategies that I've used, but in a really comprehensive way. I know this sounds like it's a commercial for the course, but I'm just so excited about it because I wanted it to be something people could get through in about a day. So you could break it up if you wanted to, but I was really specific. The way I like to take an online course is I like to go through the whole thing. I don't like it to be so long that I can't get through it and I have to do it. And I don't like the dripping because I will not do it. I don't go back to it unless I'm getting some kind of certification or something and I have to do it that way. I won't do it. So I wanted it to be a course that I would want to take that would be really helpful. And I also wanted bonus material that would be really helpful for nourishing the nervous system. So you'd have it all in one place. And I did it. I did it. And I can't believe that I decided to launch in January, which means that I was working so much over the holidays. But I'm so proud of it. So I hope that some of you will check it out. If that's kind of resonating, if you're curious about it, you can head to my website, nourished-soul.com, and check it out. It's called the Quantum Stress Management 21-Day Reset. So I created it so that you could get through it in about a day, wrap your brain around it, and create your own 21-day reset plan. So that's what I did. And if you're interested, you can get any course that I put out, I will start giving a discount to the podcast listeners. So if you want to use the discount code podcast, you can get a discount, so 20% off on the course, the Quantum Stress Management course. So you can go check that out if you want to. My point is that I realized about May of last year. So when my youngest son was graduating from high school, and I was talking to a friend, and I was realizing that I do not feel proud. I couldn't think of a time in my life when I actually felt proud. I can think, which is really why I wanted to bring this up. I'm really good. I've always been really good at thinking my feelings, not feeling my feelings. And I'll explain that a little bit better in a second. But what I realized was I was feeling relief at his graduation. I was feeling a lot of contentment. I'm really good at feeling content. when I look back at my life, not contempt, but content. So feeling kind of that neutral, just feeling not ecstatic, not bad, just kind of a neutral content. And I started wondering recently if that content is actually me not feeling. Because I don't want to go to either of the extremes. And I've been really good at not going to the extremes very much, which I think has also contributed to me having a dysregulated nervous system for a long time and feeling that anxiousness and stress more than I needed to. So I'll circle back to that. But this feeling of proud, right? I realized, am I able to feel proud? And I thought about some of the biggest moments in my life, like when I defended my dissertation, big day. I was relieved. I was content. I even felt maybe a little happy, but I didn't really feel proud. After I presented my dissertation in the morning, I think, yeah, and then went across the street and had just a lunch with my family in this like greasy diner. And then I went back across the street and taught a class. And then on the way home, I picked up diapers because I had a 1 year old. So it just didn't feel like this really eventful. It was this huge day. It was huge, but I don't remember actually feeling proud. And I thought that was a little concerning when I started realizing I don't know if I can feel proud. So I started working on it, not working on it like trying to make something happen, feel a feeling, not that kind. I just do what I do, what I've told you on the podcast many times is I look for opportunities. First you have awareness, and then you start looking for opportunities to just notice and maybe practice what it would feel like to feel proud. Because I can think. So here's what I want to tell you about. I think proud, not feel proud. It's really hard to describe this, what it feels like inside. So I guess there is some feeling, but it's more of this kind of flat feeling inside, but more of a thinking proud. So it's not thinking about being proud necessarily. That doesn't really describe it. And for some of you, you're going, oh, I think I do that. And others are like, no, I feel my feelings. Good for you, because what I've figured out is that you got to feel it to heal it. And feeling our feelings is really important. But we often, people that are very emotional and feel all their feelings are told that they're a little too much from their family and friends and other people around them. And so it's feeling the feelings in a way that is okay to be in the world feeling your feelings without losing yourself. So feeling and with a more regulated nervous system so that you're not lashing out. So you're not shoving things down, but you're also not lashing out, because that tends to be a little bit of a problem when people start to feel the feelings. The other issue for a lot of us that don't like to feel our feelings, or just learned not to, or whatever happened, that we don't feel our feelings, is we're afraid that, and not even consciously afraid, we're just walking around with this is our experience of not feeling feelings, because if we did, it would maybe be this landfall, like an avalanche of emotion. And I haven't actually seen that happen in working with people. That's usually not the system seems to know when it needs to pull back. And so it doesn't, we go through the emotion if we go all the way through the emotion, and we can regulate our nervous system. So nourish the nervous system so that we can become more and more stress resilient and able to handle these things. So this feeling of proud came up right when I finished. And what kept happening as each module would get edited, I was like, this is really good. Like, there are places that, if you follow me and have been listening to this podcast for any time, you know that I could wrap it up. There are places where I'm like, oh, I could have said that a little, I could have wrapped that up a little more efficiently. But overall, I stuck to exactly what I wanted to say. It is really good, and I'm really excited about it. So I allowed myself to really feel proud, which is a new feeling for me. A lot of feelings are new for me this past year. And the more I have nourished my nervous system, the easier that has been. but it is not always easy. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. The second thing that I wanted to talk about that is not really talked about that much is when you are healing and you are becoming more and more regulated. So there's more coherence in the body, stuff will come up. Not in a way, not to scare you and say, well, then I don't want to do it, because it's not like that, because you're more able to handle it. But this has also been a process for me where I have more and more eliminated the things that were habits that became more like addictions. So I've been pretty open about talking about that, and I'm happy to do that. And last week, Shannon and I talked about sober mom life. So I have less and less of these things that I used to do to help numb. So, wine, or you can use a lot of different things where it's a habit and it might be fine until it's not fine. And only you can tell when that isn't, well, the people around you might tell you otherwise, but you can really tell inside of you when something has now become a problem, it's in the way. So for me, food addiction has been much more tricky to navigate and has been really interesting. Whereas alcohol, I gave that up. I had one day one. And so I can see that I was probably headed into a direction where I could have easily become an alcoholic. I don't know, I didn't identify with that. I just knew I wanted to quit drinking. At the time, I really felt like I was being called to do some kind of work in the world different from what I was doing. I was a professor, so different from what I was doing, but still in the kind of health and wellness and healing space. And I couldn't quite figure it out, but I just knew that I needed to be sober to do it all the time, not just before 5 p.m., right? I needed to be clean and clear. That's what I kept resonating with me, is to be clean and clear. So here I am trying to feel all these feelings, nourish my nervous system, which I think moving away from the things that have become more destructive habits or even addictions has been good, but also it can feel a little overwhelming at times, because what do you do to nourish your nervous system when you can't numb, or when you would normally numb? And I go into a lot of that in the course, right? The things that I have incorporated that are really helpful for me. But what came up is grief, a lot of grief. I talked about this in a former episode too, that I didn't realize I was carrying around so much grief. I it wasn't even on my radar. It's not surprising when when it started coming up. I was like, well, of course I've been holding on to this, but I was just not on my radar. And it was actually a friend of ours lost tragically their middle son died. And it was at his memorial that I could feel all of it coming up. And it was, of course, I was sad about the loss of this beautiful child, but all kinds of grief was coming up from my own life and things that I had grief that I had shoved down. And that can happen the more you are healing, then the more some of this stuff comes up, and it can feel like a step back in a sense. And what I'm trying to tell you is it is not a step back. I could be wrong, and other people could have a different situation, but what I've seen in my own life is that it is still an expansion. It is still part of healing. And it's a healing response is also moving in healing. And you start to get better at figuring out what's an adverse reaction that you might be having and what is healing. So when things might erupt, like a headache or stomach digestive issues or skin issues, those kinds of things that can kind of come up, that's actually a sign of healing. Often that's a sign of healing. It's also communication from the body. And where I have come in terms of communication from the body, I've worked with enough people now that I can see it in other people. It's a little harder to see it in yourself, but you can see it in other people pretty clearly. Is that I feel like our soul is talking to us through our body, and your body will not lie to you. The mind makes up stories. We've talked about that on the podcast too. The mind can be tricky. I don't think it's trying to trick us, but it can trick us and it can start saying things that are not very helpful, but it's trying to make story. Whereas your body is really clearly communicating with you. And I believe in a soul. You might call that source energy or some other word that maybe makes sense to you, which is fine. It doesn't matter what you call that. But there's this piece that will often be missing in people's healing, and I believe that's the alignment with the soul. And the more I nourish my nervous system, especially with the quantum health strategies, that I'm telling you, that has moved the needle more than anything. So the next I'm going to have several people, my friends that I love in the quantum health space. I'm going to keep bringing them back to the podcast so that we can keep sharing. I want you to hear from real people that are using these strategies and the different ways that it's helped them. So I'm going to keep bringing them back onto the show. And I mean, that's everything that's in the course. That's what I'm really excited about. The more I have done that, I'm telling you, it's hard to put words to this, but the only way I can describe it is I feel more and more aligned with who I really am, big S self, what I would call soul. And I feel my right place in nature as part of nature. And it's a process. It's taken a while to feel like this, but it's happening. And so even if it feels like something might be a step back, or you're going to start feeling some stuff that you haven't felt in a really long time because you shoved it down, it's still part of the healing process. And I want to share that because some of you might be feeling like it's a spiral backwards. And you might be, there have been places in my life where I felt like I'm spiraling, but it's because I'm doing more numbing, not because I'm doing more feeling. So I want you to get clear about that in your own life if you want. You don't have to do anything, right? But to get clear, am I actually spiraling more out of control because I'm doing things that are more numbing? Or am I feeling more? Am I moving more in this direction of healing, but it's feeling really uncomfortable and messy? Because healing can be very uncomfortable and messy, which I already knew that. This is just different. This just feels different. And you may be shoving down things like feeling happy, proud, joyous. So I'll circle back to the content, right? This feeling content. If you resonated with that and you're like, oh, yeah, sometimes I feel just kind of neutral, kind of this content. And I remember feeling that way as a kid too, just kind of neutral. I don't even know how to describe it other than that. And I am wondering now if that was more of a not feeling. So I just want to circle back to that and just pose that question to you if you are somebody who feels, pretty content and can even feel kind of calm, or are you not feeling? You could be feeling, yeah, I like content. I like that feeling. I just want to make sure that I'm not just not feeling. And you might want to think about that for your own healing journey too. And the more that you heal your nervous system, and the more I call it nourishing the nervous system, because that's how it feels to me. It almost feels like this balm when you find the right tools and strategies and way of life that's really aligned with who you really are, and it feels very nourishing to the nervous system, then you feel more aligned. In my experience, there's more of a feeling of alignment with my soul, which is what I have wanted always. That's why I started the podcast. I wanted to talk about this alignment with the soul with other people and say, how do we do that? What does that look like? And so that's where I am right now. And I wanted to share that. So if you want to check out the quantum stress management course, I would love for you to do that. Head over to nourished-soul.com. You can find the QSM, which is the quantum stress management. Find that. And then you can go, if you decide, if you're like, oh, this looks good, it resonates with me. If it's a full body yes for you, your body is saying yes, not just your mind, right? Because if it's your mind, you want to check it out with the body. If your body's saying, yes, this is something I really want to do, that's awesome. Then use the coupon code, the discount code podcast for 20% off. And then come to the Q&As because it comes with Q&As with me on Zoom. And I really want to hear from you. I want to hear how it's going. And that's a way that we can start talking. So, always, thank you for being here. Thank you to the people who regularly listen to this podcast. I am so grateful because this is really fun for me. And I hope it's helpful for you. Until next time.